Do you think you know the people around you? You believe you can identify when someone is toxic, when an energy is heavy, when a behavior crosses the line of what is acceptable. You have built a fortress to protect yourself from the obvious villains of the world. But what if I told you that while you stand guard at the front gate, the real danger is not at your door? It has already seeped through the cracks in the walls. It is already inside. What if I told you that the most destructive people you will ever meet are not the angry, the loud, or the overtly cruel? They are often charming, kind, intelligent, even members of your own family. And while you try to protect yourself from the monsters of fable, you are opening the doors of your mind to something infinitely more dangerous, the unconscious of others, invading your own psychic space. Carl Gustav Jung, the master explorer of the human soul, dedicated his life to studying these hidden dynamics. He revealed that most of what truly governs us, our fears, our desires, our reactions, is not under our conscious control. This applies not just to you, it applies to everyone. And that is precisely where the danger lies. Because when someone is blind to their own darkness, that darkness, what Jung called the shadow, does not simply vanish. It seeks a host. And often, that host is you. Think now. How many times have you felt emotionally drained after talking to someone, as if your very life force was siphoned away? How many times have you been blamed for something you didn't do, or been made the savior in a tragedy that wasn't even yours? This is not a coincidence. This is a psychological war being waged on a battlefield you don't even know exists. You think you are helping. You think you are being empathetic. But you are sinking into a psychological field that is not yours, being manipulated by dynamics that now control you. Today, we journey into the heart of this darkness. We will expose, one by one, the 6 most dangerous psychological profiles identified by Jung. These are not evil people acting with deliberate malice. They are far more dangerous. They are the unconscious ones, driven by internal forces they themselves do not understand. And that is why they are so destructive. Be warned. After this, you will no longer be able to look at people, or even at yourself, in the same way again. The 6 shadows. The unconscious manipulator, the psychic vampire, our first. Shadow is the most insidious because it wears the mask of a victim. Imagine living with someone who blames you for everything they feel, who turns your very presence into a trigger for their pain. At first, they seem fragile, sensitive, deep. You feel compelled to help. But over time, you realize you are being dragged into a battlefield that isn't yours. This is the unconscious manipulator. They are unaware of their own wounds, but they project them onto others as a form of psychic survival. Jung said, "What we do not confront in ourselves, we will encounter as fate." And often, this fate has a name and a face, and it shares the table with you. This person lives in a state of chronic projection. They do not see you. They see a lost part of themselves and react to it as if it were real. When they feel anger, it's because you provoked it. When they are sad, it's because you disappointed them. This distortion is so subtle that you start to question your own sanity. Was I really insensitive? Did I say something wrong? Am I toxic? Worse still, these people are often charming, charismatic, with an aura of emotional intensity that creates a trap. You think you can heal them, but what you are doing is sacrificing your own psychic health to rescue someone who refuses to dive into themselves. Jung warns that these patterns of projection are especially dangerous because they place us in a symbolic role: savior, enemy, traitor, father, mother, anything but who we really are. The only way to protect yourself is to develop awareness, to recognize the pattern and to constantly ask yourself, is this feeling mine or has it been induced in me? The bearer of the persona, the hollow saint. Not all danger comes from extreme behaviors. Sometimes it comes from what seems too perfect, from the ever-ready smile, the impeccable posture, the flawless image. This is the bearer of the persona, the hollow saint. The persona, for Jung, is the social mask we all wear to adapt to the world. It is not inherently a mistake. The problem begins when someone identifies completely with the mask, when they believe they are the role they play, the perfect doctor, the ideal mother, the flawless friend. Everything that is spontaneous, vulnerable, and authentic gets locked in the basement of their psyche. Living with such a person is like living in a theater. Everything seems rehearsed. There is a lack of spontaneity, of truth, of depth. And worse, they project this demand for perfection onto you. They expect you to perform, to fit in, to collaborate with their flawless narrative. If you express an intense emotion, a doubt, a pain, they retreat. They become uncomfortable, because anything that reminds them of what is repressed within them becomes unbearable. Jung warned that this is one of the greatest threats to individuation, the path of self-knowledge. The real danger begins when you, too, are hypnotized by the role you play in their life. You start to police yourself, to measure your words, to hide parts of yourself that don't fit their ideal narrative. Gradually, you also begin to wear a mask, and you don't even notice you are coexisting with a persona because you have become one yourself, the owner of the repressed shadow, the sleeping volcano. But there is something even darker, because when someone represses what they feel, think, and desire for too long, it doesn't disappear. It accumulates. It ferments in the unconscious until it transforms into a raw, volatile shadow. And then we enter a more dangerous territory. This is the owner of the repressed shadow, the sleeping volcano. A person who lives a controlled, polished, restrained life. Always correct, always moderate, always polite. But behind this veneer of balance lies a tectonic pressure waiting to break free. Everything they consider wrong, ugly, or unacceptable is simply pushed down into the basement of the soul. The shadow, Jung states, is everything the individual refuses to recognize in themselves. It is the hatred you do not admit to feeling, the envy you rationalize, the ambition you disguise as humility. And as Jung taught, what you do not make conscious directs your life, and you call it destiny. This person does not seem dangerous at first. On the contrary, they are often admired. Disciplined, kind, helpful. But they cannot tolerate weakness in others. They react poorly to spontaneity. They are bothered by intense emotions. And then, one day, over something small and insignificant, they explode. And when it happens, it is devastating, disproportionate, brutal. You can identify this pattern in people who hold grudges for years, who sabotage relationships in a passive-aggressive manner. The answer lies in their unintegrated shadow. And the most important point, the shadow is not just made of bad things. It also contains your denied potential, your repressed creativity, your hidden strength. But when the shadow is ignored, all of this turns into poison. The moral controller, the inquisitor of guilt. This repression does not arise from nowhere. Often, it is fed by a rigid moral ideal that turns guilt into a tool of control. And this is where we enter the territory of the moral controller, the inquisitor of guilt. Not every executioner carries a sword. Some use crosses, rules, dogmas, and ready-made phrases. They are those who claim to be driven by ethics and righteousness, but deep down, they are imprisoning themselves and others in a cage of guilt and shame. This, for Jung, is one of the most insidious forms of psychic repression. The moral controller, instead of integrating their own shadow, projects it onto the behavior of others. They condemn in you what they cannot accept in themselves. They are the people who frequently point fingers, but never look inward. They position themselves as a reference for behavior, not because they truly are, but because they desperately need to maintain an image of moral superiority. The greater the internal repression, the more intense the need to project the shadow. The problem is that unlike a common manipulator, The moral controller believes they are doing good. They genuinely think they are correcting, saving, or educating you. This makes their influence even more toxic because it is cloaked in authority and good intentions. Their criticism comes with phrases like, "It's for your own good," or "Someone needs to tell you the truth." But this truth is not neutral. It is laden with their own unlived life. If you live with someone like this, you start to feel constantly guilty, watched, judged. The morality of the other becomes your prison. The complex individual, the emotional puppet. But the moralist is not the only one guided by unconscious forces. There is another type, even more volatile and unpredictable. The complex individual, the emotional puppet. Imagine living with someone who at one moment is sweet and affectionate, and in the next explodes in anger over nothing. A compliment turns into a demand. A joke becomes an aggression. This is the experience of those who live alongside a person dominated by what Jung called unconscious complexes. Complexes are autonomous nuclei of emotion and memory that reside in the unconscious. They are like fragmented personalities within us, created by traumas and psychic wounds. And they can take control of our consciousness at any moment. The complex person reacts not to the present, but to echoes of the past. A simple comment connects unconsciously to an old wound of abandonment or rejection, and those nearby pay the price. When they react with fury or extreme sadness, they believe they are being rational, but they are not. They are puppets, and their complexes are pulling the strings. Living with them is confusing and addictive. There are moments of genuine connection and affection, but these are always followed by unpredictable ruptures. You find yourself walking on eggshells, trying to avoid waking the monster that sleeps within them. But here is the brutal truth. That monster is not awakened by you. It is always there, latent, hungry, waiting for any trigger. The unresolved symbiosis, the soul eater. But the most dangerous part is yet to come. Because while the complex person oscillates between extremes, there is another type who does not shout, does not explode. They consume your energy until you have nothing left. This is the final and most insidious shadow, the psychic vampire, or what Jung would call a symbol of the unresolved symbiotic relationship. Some people don't want your presence. They want your energy. They will do everything to drain it, not with violence, but with subtle demands, chronic victimhood, and emotional dependency camouflaged as affection. This is the pathological bond that hinders psychic growth and dissolves the contours of the self. The psychic vampire needs your constant attention, your daily comfort, your being available all the time. But behind this neediness is a void that is not yours and that you will never be able to fill. You start by offering support. Then you give time. Then you tolerate emotional abuse until you realize all your energy is being drained and you no longer know where the other ends and where you begin. The exhaustion is profound. It is not just physical. It is existential. It feels as if your soul is being devoured, drop by drop, day after day. The danger is not just in the exhaustion. It is in the dissolution of the self. You start to feel guilty for wanting space, for wanting silence, for wanting distance. Because the psychic vampire is a master at reversing roles. From needy, they become manipulator. From victim, they become accuser. This video was a mirror, a dive into the dynamics that bind us, hurt us, and keep us unconscious. But Jung does not leave us in the darkness. He offers us a path out, a path to make the unconscious conscious. This path applies to both others and ourselves, because perhaps at some point in your life, you too have been one of these shadows. None of us is immune. The difference lies in who has the courage to look within and who chooses to project that weight onto others. The path forward is what Jung called individuation. It is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming whole. It is the difficult, lifelong process of integrating the conscious and the unconscious including the shadow. It is not about blaming others, but about stepping out of the hostage position, about reclaiming sovereignty over your own psyche. It begins with awareness, with the courage to see these patterns in the world and in yourself. And it leads to the most powerful form of freedom, the freedom that comes from knowing who you are in all your light and all your darkness. Because the more light we shed on the unconscious, the less it controls us. Now, I want you to participate. Leave in the comments which of these profiles you have faced, and which, if you are brutally honest, you perceive within yourself. Your comment could be the beginning of awareness for you, and for those who read it. And before you go, an important notice. The next video is also essential. It will take you even deeper into this journey of self-knowledge. You need to see, because the more light we shed on the unconscious, the less it controls us. Subscribe. We will see you there.